14 German shepherds snap into a circle around a little girl, and the only person who walks into it is the Mafia boss everyone swore had no heart. "Stay behind me, Veronica," Bruno Lombardi says, and the airport realizes the danger isn't the child. Morning light pours through a cathedral of glass, turning polished floors into shine. Boarding calls drift like gulls. A crew snaps a selfie beneath the blue sign for Gate B12. No one notices the girl at first. Pink jacket, magenta leggings, a plush unicorn hugged so tight its ear sits stiff with clumsy stitches. Her tag reads, "VERONICA TORRES." She isn't crying, she's holding herself together. The K9 unit glides by in easy rhythm. 14 shepherds, 14 handlers, leashes slack, discipline baked into muscle. The lead dog's ears tilt. He breathes once, twice, then gives a short, weighted bark that cuts the hum. The team shifts without waiting. Paws tap. Bodies fan out. In 3 breaths, the dogs have formed a circle around Veronica, pointed outward like shields. Chairs scrape, coffee sloshes. Someone says, "Is she dangerous?" Another answers, "They're protecting her." Commands crackle, "Heel! Out! Leave!" The dogs refuse. Their posture is not attack. It is verdict. The ring tightens by inches. Veronica flinches, then freezes. "Please make them stop," she whispers to no one who can hear. What happens next had the entire airport in a standstill. Before we go further, click subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Your support helps us keep these stories alive. And trust me, the best part is yet to come. Now, let's get back to it. The crowd parts around a different kind of silence, the hush that follows a headline into a room. From a ripple of bodyguards, a single man separates. Bruno Lombardi moves as if the floor owes him safe passage. He doesn't raise his voice. He lifts one hand, and his men go still. Holster. Then he steps through the wall of fur. "Easy," he tells the handlers, not mocking, not meek. To the dogs, a low, steady cue. Work. They do. Heads dip, noses flare, tails become needles. A trained animal can tell when danger is on the inside of a circle or the outside. Every shepherd points to the world, not the child. Bruno lowers to a knee so Veronica sees a face and not a rumor. "You're safe with me," he says, using her name as if it is a promise. He keeps his hand open in front of her, a shelter made of bone and intent. Air moves across his tongue. Antiseptic, coffee, jet fuel, and something thin and chemical beneath. Adhesive, solvent. He glances at the unicorn's stiff ear without breaking eye contact with the girl. "Sir, back up," the lead handler warns. Bruno doesn't. "Scan the toy," he says. "Not for heat, for signal." "For what?" "Traffic," he says. "If the dogs made a wall, they're afraid for her, not of her." A handheld arrives. The tech sweeps the unicorn. The device chirps, then prints a jittering line. "Metal signature," he reports. "Active ping." The K9s settle lower. Their noses test the air like instruments. The ring is a breathing barricade, and the child at its heart is no longer the question. She is the answer to a different one. Who would hide a device in a toy and count on panic to do the rest? Bruno looks past the circle, past the glass. The perimeter road runs like a scar along the edge of the morning. A black van idles by the fence, patient where most vehicles are impatient. His men tense. He shakes his head once. Stand down, but only with his eyes. A second later, his thumb sends the same order to the devices in their pockets. "Keep the circle," he tells the handlers. "She's bait." The teeth are somewhere else. "Bait for who?" asks the lieutenant with the headset. "For me," Bruno says, the way some men say I was expected. He taps his jacket pocket. "The people who want a public ending know my schedule and my habits. They know I'd walk toward a child. Rex, the lead shepherd, according to his collar, barks once and cuts his muzzle toward the windows. A maintenance bag sits half-tucked beneath a bench, None of the nearby passengers claim. The handheld spikes when the tech sweeps it. "We've got residue and a radio trigger," he says, voice gone thin. Alarms surge. Security throws a cordon around the bag. The concourse exhales civilians in staggered lines. Through it all, Bruno remains inside the circle like a contradiction with a pulse. He keeps Veronica breathing. 4 counts in, 2 to hold, 4 counts out, something he learned in louder rooms than this. If this were just about arrests, the dogs would have ended their work, he says softly, and it's unclear whether he's speaking to Veronica or to the handler within earshot. But they're still pointing. That means the threat is moving. Outside, the van's brake lights flare. Inside, the EOD team unspools tools with a surgeon's economy. The sensor on the unicorn keeps ticking like rain on a roof. People film from beyond the tape. The lieutenant's radio hisses. Units in pursuit. Sirens shred the morning. Tires shriek. Helicopter rotors begin to chop the sky. Bruno does not leave. Reputation would tell him to disappear. Character keeps him still. He is the man the city fears, and the man a child steadies herself against. The two truths sit side by side, refusing to argue. "If you're scared," he tells Veronica, "look at me instead of everything else." She does. It helps. A dozen small choices add up to a different story than the one expected. The mobster who orders his own guns away, the cops who don't shove him back, the dogs that disobey to protect. If you believe courage can look like that, quiet, stubborn, disciplined, stay with this story. Share it with someone who has forgotten that instinct can be a kind of wisdom. The van finally lunges. Patrol cars slice after it. Inside the terminal, the maintenance bag is lifted into a containment bucket. The unicorn's ear opens. Wire gleams. The tech whispers, "Transmitter, not payload," and scribbles coordinates as the screen vibrates. Bruno's mouth tightens. "So the blast was never meant for her," he says. "It was meant for wherever that signal points once I step too close." The dogs keep their outward stare. Veronica keeps his hand in her sight. And as the scene tilts from fear toward understanding, our story stops being about what people thought Bruno Lombardi was and becomes, instead, the record of what he chose to do when 14 police dogs taught a terminal full of strangers how protection is supposed to look. Behind the tape, Lieutenant Sofia Rinaldi, sharp bob, headset, a scar that says she has been near explosions, keeps the command post moving. She clocks the ink at Bruno's collar, the steadiness in his stance, the way Veronica follows his voice. She wants to cuff him. She chooses to wait. The lead shepherd's tag reads REX. The others watch with the grave patience working dogs wear when they know a room's secret. A janitor recalls a contractor who fixed a toy ear minutes ago and never came back. Passengers retell what they saw, and every retelling moves the dogs closer to sainthood. Rinaldi glances at the circle once more and understands the shape of the day. Instinct first, procedure second, pride last. What follows will move fast, a pursuit on the tarmac, a bag carried to a steel bucket, a toy's ear opening like a confession. But the slow part matters more. The moment a feared man decided to hold still while 14 dogs taught a terminal what loyalty is. The terminal holds its breath. Red ropes go up, passengers are pushed back, and a pop-up command post blooms beside Gate B12. Folding tables, headsets, a field printer chattering out stills from security cameras. The ring of German shepherds stays tight around Veronica, bodies angled outward the way shields angle toward arrows. Their breath fogs the polished floor. Their eyes never stop moving. Lieutenant Sofia Rinaldi arrives like a blade, navy windbreaker thrown over plainclothes, hair pinned into a no-nonsense knot, jaw set. She takes in the scene once, crisp and clinical, then cuts straight toward the man in the black suit standing inside the living wall. "Out," she says, low enough that only he hears. "Hands where I can see them." Handler team will take the child. Bruno Lombardi doesn't move. His left hand is open to the officers, palm bare, His right is a steady, quiet barrier holding Veronica behind his leg. "You move the child, you break the circle," he answers. "Let them work, Lieutenant." Rinaldi tilts her head, weighing whether to have him dragged out. "You don't give orders here." "I don't," he agrees, "but I do give good advice. Start with, kill the PA speakers. Keep the crowd from surging. Put your long guns down, no friendly fire if something pops, and get a handheld that reads short-range traffic, not heat." The toy is talking. The handlers glance to Rinaldi. For half a second, she's furious at herself for considering anything a mobster says. Then she nods, brisk. "Kill the overheads. Crowd control to silent hand signals. Leos, holster long guns. Safety's on. To a tech. Find me the right scanner." She steps closer, eyes hard. "You so much as blink wrong, I'll put you on the floor." "Respectfully," Bruno says, "if I blink wrong, we all go to the floor." He fishes a phone from his inner pocket. Slowly, 2 fingers, every move telegraphed, and tilts the screen so she can watch. A contact labeled only with a black dot. He types, "Stand down. All crews. No movement." Rinaldi's brows notch. "Who's that to?" "Everyone who thinks they live or die by my temper," he says. He hits send. 3 dots appear, then nothing. "Restraint costs," he adds, more to himself than to her. "It always comes out of someone." A handler hustles over with the handheld. Another shepherd, Ajax, darker muzzle, a scar nicking one ear, lifts his nose, drinks the air, and takes a half step toward the window. A sound like a breathy huff escapes him. The rest of the pack adjusts, as if he's just nudged a compass needle. "Watch Ajax," Bruno says. "He's sampling airflow." Whatever they hid is off our 10 o'clock, closer to the glass. Rinaldi keeps him in her peripheral vision, refusing to give him the satisfaction of eye contact, and signals the tech. The scanner chirps across the unicorn, then along Veronica's sleeve. The screen lights with a harsh, toothy waveform. "Metal signature, low-power ping," the tech says. "Not heat. Not pressure." Bruno points with a small flick. Permission asked of the dogs more than the cops. "Your problem isn't in her hands," he says. "It's what her hands announce. Pair that ping to a second device, and you've got a silent tripwire." "Stop guessing," Rinaldi snaps. He lets the scold slide. "I'm not guessing." Listen to the dogs' tails. They're guarding and orienting. They're telling you the hurt is out there, not in here. Ajax huffs again, head angling toward the windowed concourse. Rinaldi keys her shoulder mic. "Team 2, sweep the glass perimeter low and slow, look for maintenance stash, eyes up for any remote line of sight." She keeps Bruno at arm's length with a look. "How do you even know how to read them?" "First job I had," he says, voice gone thinner with memory. "I shared nights with 2 retired K9s, 1 shepherd, 1 Malinois. The shepherd hated loud boys who lied and loved old men who sat quiet. The Malinois only respected work. You tell a dog, 'Good boy,' and he hears noise. You tell him, 'Work,' and he hears a purpose." He nods at the ring. These know their purpose. "Heartwarming," Rinaldi says, "but there's less blade in it now." The handheld thrums at a new pitch. The tech frowns, scrolls, then widens the display. Lieutenant? This is weird." "English," she says. "The transmitter's broadcasting on a time-hopping microburst with a rolling geofence." "See these permission windows?" He taps. "The system is primed to react when certain device IDs enter the bubble. It's not just location, it's who." Bruno doesn't look surprised. "Show her the sample IDS," he says. The tech hesitates, then turns the tiny screen. A list scrolls, hashed strings, last 4 characters visible. Rinaldi doesn't recognize them until Bruno pulls another device from his pocket, this one dead and wrapped in copper tape. He peels back an inch of foil with a thumbnail scarred white. The partial ID on its backplate matches one on the list. Another sealed phone in his breast pocket ticks the second. Rinaldi's hand inches toward her cuffs, instincts warring. So when you approach the girl, the bubble wakes the other device, Bruno finishes. Detonate near a crowd. Let every camera capture me within the blast radius. Sell it as a war I started. Rinaldi studies him, hunting for the tell that he's orchestrated all of this. She finds only a very tired man holding still so other people don't get dead. It isn't absolution. It is data. Fine, she says. Conditional trust. Into her mic. All units treat B12 as baited geofence. Do not bring unknown electronics inside the ring. EOD en route, priority 2 to the tech. Map the bubble with the badge beacons, then drag a heatless scan along the benches by the glass. Ajax's ears prick. He steps left. The line of shepherds shuffles with him like a school of fish turning with a current. Veronica peeks from behind Bruno's coat, eyes huge but not lost. Are the dogs angry? She whispers. They're busy, he says. Busy and brave. Rinaldi catches the way he turns his body to shade the child, not claim her. Another piece of data she didn't ask for. The command post hums into a colder order. The PA speakers are dead. Officers signal with fingers, not voices. A medic kneels just outside the ring, watching Veronica's color and breathing without crossing the threshold the dogs are holding. The crowd beyond the ropes has settled into the hush of a church at the moment after prayer. Team 2, status, Rinaldi murmurs. Perimeter clear. Wait, comes back in her ear. We've got a maintenance bench under the window cluster near B10, canvas bag tucked deep. No owner in proximity. Run it with the handheld first, she says. No touch, no tilt. Bruno keeps his eyes on Ajax, who keeps his nose on the invisible stream of air pushing along the glass corridor. Left, he says softly. The tech reaches with the scanner as if extending a dowsing rod. A bar fills, a tone rises, the device coughs an angry red. Spike, the tech blurts, adrenaline cracking his voice. Significant signature in the bag, metal, wiring, and a distinct harmonic at the same interval as the unicorn's ping. Everything tightens by a hair. The dogs' bodies go from hard to stone. Ajax's hackles lift, his mouth stays closed. Rinaldi's lips press into a line. EOD, we're hot on a probable secondary at B10, interior side of glass, she says into the mic, voice steady. All civilians back another 20 meters. Shield the child where you have her. No one cross the dog ring. She glances at Bruno, or rather, she lets herself glance. You were right about one thing, she says. The hurt is out there. Bruno gives a single nod. The muscles across his jaw jump once, then settle. He tilts his phone as if considering another message, then sets it down on the floor by his shoe. No more electronics, he tells Rinaldi. Not inside their work. The tech starts to speak, thinks better of it, and resets his scan. Ajax stares through the window at the long spill of light over the tarmac, still drinking the thin threads of air. The other shepherds follow his gaze, 14 needles pointing one direction. The command post grows as quiet as a held breath. On the far side of the concourse, blue vests start to ripple toward the bag. A pair of bomb techs in charcoal suits trot in a measured, almost gentle way that makes the entire terminal seem made of glass. The world narrows to a line between a child, a toy, and a canvas fold beneath a bench. Rinaldi moves half an inch closer to Bruno and the girl. You stay inside this circle until I tell you not to, she says. Gladly, he answers. The handheld sings a higher, uglier note. The bar slams to the right. The tech looks up, eyes gone bright with fear and focus. It's not just a signature, he says. It's keyed. Same geofence interval. If the bubble closes again while that bag is live... We lose the room, Rinaldi finishes. The shepherds don't look at the men or the machines. They look where danger is, and because they do, everyone else finally does too. EOD, Rinaldi says, calm as a tide. Confirm readings at B10 canvas bag. Confirm, a voice replies in her ear. We see the spike. Copy, she says. Proceed. Ajax lowers his head, muscles coiling, a low, sustained growl vibrating through the ring until it reaches the soles of every shoe on the shiny floor. The scanner shrieks, the canvas shifts, and the bench beneath the window becomes the most important object in the world. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe and like this video. It helps more people discover stories like this one. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now, take a deep breath, because what happens next will change everything. Red tape bloomed across the concourse like a wound dressing. The EOD team moved inside the cordon with the unhurried speed of people who know the clock is their enemy. One tech, visor down, suit whispering, knelt by the maintenance bag Ajax had flagged under the window bench. Another set a small collapsible shield between the bag and the crowd. A third worked the handheld, wand sweeping, antenna tasting the air. Static free zone, the tech called. All personal comms off inside the ring. The handlers clipped their radios. The dogs settled but didn't soften. Ajax stared at the bag so hard his eyes barely blinked. Bruno stood where Rinaldi had planted him, inside the K9 circle, just left of Veronica, close enough for her sleeve to brush his coat. He didn't move, didn't speak to her, only let his body be a wall that didn't shake. Rinaldi stayed at the line, headset tilted off one ear, taking updates, tossing orders, keeping her gaze on both the bag and the man every briefing said should already be in cuffs. The tech unzipped the bag by degrees, gloved fingers teasing the teeth apart. Inside, an orange vest, a bundle of cable ties, a dented thermos, rolled tape. Ordinary things arranged with a pickpocket's science. He lifted the vest and found the nest, a plastic housing gray as gum on a sidewalk, 2 leads twisted to a board no bigger than a wallet, a whip antenna flattened against foam to look like packing. A faint, scorched smell rode the air. Residue present, the tech said softly. Ammonium and perchlorate trace. Not set for blast, set for call. Radio triggered? Rinaldi asked. Looks like it. There's a receiver here and a secondary bridge, waiting for a very specific handshake. Across the tape, people filmed with shaking hands until officers forced the screens down. The intercom piped a boarding call for a gate no one could reach. Veronica's breath touched Bruno's wrist in small, quick taps. He didn't look back. Listen, Bruno said, eyes on the gear. They wanted me at the girl, not at the bag. You create emotion in one place, you hide intention in another. When I step into the radius near her toy, the van kisses this receiver. That handshake lights the bridge. He pointed with his chin. Bang in the bag, bodies in the hall, and the story writes itself. Lombardi War, airport battleground. Rinaldi's stare was flat. You telling me a bedtime story or saving me time? Both, he said. Your tech is going to find a geofence in that board. I'm the ghost in its fence. Copy, the tech said, already humming the scanner over the circuit. Geofence parameters present. Coordinates are local to the concourse. Device is listening for a very short proximity pulse keyed to hold. 3 common MAC profiles. 2 are burner ranges. The third, he looked up, matches a device class often used in encrypted SAT relays. Rinaldi's eyes cut to Bruno's pocket. He showed her his empty hands. My phone is off. The other phone is not within range. Other phone, she said dryly. The one I don't have, he said. A voice crackled on her shoulder mic from the perimeter post. Lieutenant, we've got chatter on public safety channels. Passenger reports a contractor in a yellow vest helped a kid with a torn toy by the windows. 2 minutes before the dogs broke. Contractor? Rinaldi snapped. Name? Badge scans list a temp named D. Procopio. Badge history's thin. He didn't clock out. Bruno didn't move. "The vest in that bag," he said. The EOD tech slid the thermos, rolled it with a knuckle, and unscrewed the cap. Inside there was no coffee, just a coiled pigtail antenna and a little slab radio with a taped note, 121.25, the civilian air band. The tech's brows climbed behind glass. "Radio trigger on tower bleed," he murmured. "Cute." "Lieutenant?" called a handler near Veronica, gentling his voice. "Kids hearing this?" Rinaldi came in 2 steps, kneeling so her badge lowered below the girl's eyes. "Hey, Veronica. You're doing perfect. Can you tell me something? Did a man in a yellow jacket talk to you?" Veronica pressed closer to Bruno's coat. He said my unicorn was hurt," she whispered. "He said he could fix." "He had nice hands." Rinaldi nodded once and kept her voice warm. "That was very brave to remember. Did he say anything else?" Veronica frowned, fishing for words. "He said, 'All fixed.' He said, 'Your daddy will be proud you didn't cry.'" Bruno felt the muscles in his jaw harden and forced them loose. "You caught that?" he asked, not looking at Rinaldi. "I did," she said. Then into the radio. "Flag any contractor sign-ins against that vest serial. Sweep the maintenance corridor cams. Pull every frame near B12 in the last 20 minutes. A uniform hustled over with a tablet from the command post." "CCTV is slow, but we've got a clip," he said, breathless. Rinaldi took it. Grainy footage from the glass railing angle showed the yellow-vested man kneeling by the window bench. He leaned close to a child out of frame, hands quick, head bent like a priest. He rose, pressed a toy into small arms, and turned away at an angle that kept his face married to shadow. A patch of beard, a cap brim, enough to promise a man, not enough to name one. Veronica touched the screen with a tiny finger. "That's him," she said. "He said, 'fixed.'" The word rolled through the tape line like a cold wind. Puzzle to conspiracy in a breath. Rinaldi felt it in her ribs. This wasn't a fluke. Someone had rehearsed this theater. "AOD," she said. "What's my risk window?" "Receiver's armed," came the answer. "We've suppressed the antenna, but if the handshake finds it, we're in for a hurt." "Working the bridge. Give me 60 seconds. 1 minute, Rinaldi repeated. She looked at Bruno. "You step 1 centimeter, I cuff you to that bench." "I'm not moving," he said. "You shouldn't either." He tipped his chin at the glass wall. "Whoever put the toy in play is watching for panic. Don't give him the show." "Everyone already has the show," she muttered, rising. Behind the curtain, a murmur crested, the human tide sensing the invisible hour hand jump. Officers pushed the line back another 10 feet, hands up, calm voices in many languages. The dogs were still as statues, jaws open in low, steady pants. The sound was a quiet motor under the loud quiet of the terminal. The tech hummed through another sequence and smiled a little. "Got the bridge. We're safe to move to containment." "What about the geofence?" Rinaldi asked. "Local only," he answered. "But the handshake's not just local." It was latched to a rolling receiver, something on wheels. "Van," Bruno said. As if the word tugged a string, the radio at the perimeter cracked. "Urgent. Command. Be advised. Black panel van at the service fence just kicked. Driver in seat. No plates visible. Vehicle is rolling." Rinaldi's head snapped toward the windows. Officers on the ramp were already lifting hands, shouting, doors slamming. The helicopter sound of urgency beat across the glass, sirens winding up outside. "Units 2 and 5, intercept," she barked into her mic. "Do not push it toward the terminal." "Copy. Do not push it toward us. Air support, eyes now." The EOD tech slid the gray housing into the containment bucket, clicked the lid, and lifted with both hands to the wheeled cradle. The bag itself went into another bin. "Device neutral for transport," he reported. "Residual hazard minimized." "Move," Rinaldi said. The path cleared as if the crowd were a curtain drawn by an invisible stagehand. The bucket's wheels whispered away, the tech's suit hissing faintly, a dragon carrying its tooth out of the castle. Rinaldi turned back to Bruno. For 2 beats they simply looked at each other, her with 1,000 reports and a city on her shoulders, him with no report and a city in his shadow. Something loosened behind her eyes. "You called the move before my tech," she said. "It wasn't quite thanks." "You listened," he said. "It wasn't quite a victory." Her gaze flicked to Veronica. "You're staying until this is finished." "That's not up to me," he said, voice mild. "It's up to the dogs." Ajax answered by shifting a half step to keep Bruno and the girl in the ring. The shepherd's nose twitched toward the glass again, catching scent currents normal noses ignored. The radio roared back. "Lieutenant, van accelerating eastbound along the service road, speed climbing, attempting to breach Gate 3. "Spike strips at Gate 3, Rinaldi snapped. "Gate 4 ready. Box it between. No shots unless they force you." On the tablet, another CCTV angle bled to life. The van's nose dipping, the sunlight flaring off windshield, 2 silhouettes in the cab, one leaning forward with that tight, intent stillness Bruno recognized from 100 stakeouts. The driver jammed the wheel. The van fishtailed, straightened, lunged. Rinaldi felt the concourse tilt inside her despite the flat floor. "All units," she said, voice like a wire. "We're done wondering." "We're in it." Bruno watched the screen without blinking. He heard, in a different register, the whisper of Veronica's breath steadying, the scratch of a dog's paw on tile, the metallic mouthfeel of adhesive and solvent still faint in the air. The world tightened to 2 arenas, a chase in the hard light, a standstill in the soft, and a single decision that had already been made. The CCTV feed jerked as if someone shook the camera. The van's front end lifted over a strip of black like a whale cresting, and for a heartbeat it looked free. Then all 4 tires folded in on themselves, rubber shredding, the vehicle dragging sparks as it slumped crooked toward the fence. "Contact!" the radio shouted. "Vehicle disabled. Suspects attempting—" The transmission cut, spiked with overlapping voices. Officers in the terminal leaned toward the glass as if they could push help with their bodies. Rinaldi's hand hovered over her holster, not touching it, proving to herself she didn't need it yet. From the edge of the window bench, a forgotten coffee cup tipped and fell, splashing only itself. The sound was louder than it should have been. "Hold," Bruno said, not to Rinaldi, not to the dogs, maybe not even to the moment, just to the instinct that wanted to run, as if running could speed a siren. The radio came back in a rush. "2 males exiting, 1 fleeing on foot, K9 deploying, 2nd staying in vehicle, hands up, copy, hands up." Across the tape line, people began to breathe again. The crowd exhaled. The dogs did not. Rinaldi's shoulders dropped 1 notch. She raised the tablet to call for the next clip, the one that would show faces, names, the usable pieces. The screen instead showed the last still from Veronica's camera of a life before today, the stitched ear of a unicorn, a blur of pink sleeve, a halo of glass and sun. "Let's finish this," Rinaldi said. From the far end of the concourse, a runner pounded up with fresh footage from the maintenance hallway. The image froze. The contractor's back as he left a supply door, yellow vest flaring, a cap brim low, head turning just enough to promise a profile and keep it hidden. Veronica, small as a breath, spoke into the silence. "That's him," she said again. "The fixer." Outside, a siren rose to its screaming peak and held there, a blade of sound. Inside, the dogs lifted their heads in the same instant, ears cutting toward the windows like compass needles pointing true. The van, somewhere beyond the glass and bright, lurched once more. Units peeled out to meet it. Sirens braided into the wind as patrol cars shot down the service road after the black van. From the terminal, all you saw were blue flashes stuttering across the glass and the smear of a vehicle cutting hard for the perimeter gate. Ajax planted his paws against the window ledge and barked in a hammering rhythm, tracking something none of the humans could follow with their eyes. Nose angled, tail rigid, as if the scent itself were drawing a line through the panes. "Spike strips deploying. Units 3 and 5. A dispatcher crackled from the command post. "Suspects attempting evasive maneuvers." "Stay with me," Bruno told Veronica. He dropped to one knee beside the bench where the maintenance bag had been found moments earlier and made a small shelter with his body, keeping her out of the sight lines and cameras gathering at the edge of the cordon. Her fingers squeezed his sleeve, small and cold. The K9s ringed them in an open crescent, bodies facing outward, Ajax still thundering at the glass as if he could drag the van to a stop by voice alone. Lieutenant Rinaldi hovered 2 steps away, jaw set, radio lifted. Every instinct in her said to cuff the man in the suit, tag him as a risk, and clear the scene. Every instinct in the dogs said otherwise. The bomb technicians arrived at a jog, faces behind visors, gait quick but deliberate. One knelt by the containment bucket, another unspooled a cable like a vein across the floor. "EOD is on the bag," Rinaldi called into her mic. The tech with the scanner gave her a nod. "Residue consistent with nitrate blend. We've got a receiver board, no heavy payload. Looks like a radio relay." "Trigger?" Rinaldi asked. "Remote or proximity," the tech said. "If it's geofenced, it waits for the right device to walk into range, then wakes the relay and hops the command. Smart and ugly." Bruno's attention flicked from their hands to the girl's face. "Veronica," he said softly, "we're going to borrow a breath. It goes like this: 1, 2, hold. 1, 2. He tapped his chest for the tempo, slow and even. "You hear that, dog?" "He's counting with us." Her chest hitched. 1, 2, she whispered. Rinaldi eyed him. "You learned that in a yoga class?" "In a basement with fewer windows," he said without looking up. "Breathing is the only weapon they can't take." Ajax's barking broke for half a heartbeat, nose raking the seam of the glass like he could read a current in the air. "He still has the van," Bruno murmured. "They're bleeding heat and panic." "Dogs drink both," the dispatcher again. "Suspects tossing countermeasures." Small metallic devices, possible caltrops or sparkers. "Tell your lead to keep the right lane clear," Bruno said, still kneeling. "They'll try to bait a PIT into the fence. Push them into the service turn. There's a drainage rut. They'll fishtail." Rinaldi hesitated, then relayed it. "All units, watch for service turn east of Gate B. Avoid a pit into the fence. Herd them to the drainage rut." A brief silence, then a cop on the chase. "Copy. Adjusting formation." Bruno's phone buzzed once in his palm, a silent vibration through the bones. He turned slightly, shielding the screen, thumbed a single reply. "Stand down." A choice that cost him more than the scratches on his knuckles. Somewhere outside, men he paid to solve problems were staying in parked cars with their hands at 10 and 2 because he'd told them the only victory today was silence. "Talk to me on the geofence," Rinaldi said to the tech. The EOD specialist peered at a tablet feed wired to the transmitter they'd extracted from Veronica's toy. Numbers crawled like rain. "Receiver windows cycling every 3 minutes, looking for a signature. We mapped the list of devices it's keyed to." "Lieutenant?" He swallowed. 2 of those hashes match phones we've seen ping near this gate the last hour. Rinaldi's gaze slid to Bruno. He lifted his empty hand. "Burners," he admitted. "They watch the man they want to bury." "You see the elegance now?" "Spell it," she said, voice flat. "You draw me to the child," Bruno said, still low for Veronica's sake. "You trigger the relay when my devices enter the bubble, not to detonate here. No, you light the second piece across the room. The headline writes itself. Mob retaliation at the airport, innocent casualties, a city cleansed by outrage. They don't have to kill me to win, only make me the gravity around which the blast orbits." Rinaldi stared at him, at the dogs, at the child. It was all too neat to be untrue. "Window narrowing," the tech called. Next handshake in 40 seconds. On the glass, blue strobes streaked past. The van shot into view for a heartbeat. Black, nose dipped, a hawk of metal, and then a cruiser knifed across its path. Tires screamed. Metal groaned. Ajax's bark turned triumphant and fierce. Spike strips deployed. Drivers swerving. Right lane! Right lane! Hold that gap. 3, do not. A chorus of radio voices braided into one. Contact! The terminal answered with the softest sound. People breathing again. Passengers who'd been holding still for 10 minutes forgot not to move. The K9s ignored them, focused on the windows, on the unseen river of scent. Veronica's fingers loosened from Bruno's sleeve. Is it over? She asked. Almost, he said. One more breath. 1, 2, she whispered, stronger. The lead tech hunched closer to the receiver board nestled in the maintenance bag. We've isolated the trigger path. If the van team hits a remote while this board sees its friend, he tapped the toy transmitter sealed in a Faraday pouch. We'd get a cascade. But if we break the path before the next handshake... How long? Rinaldi barked. He checked his timer. 90 seconds. Rinaldi's eyes cut to Bruno's wrists. She could clap metal on them now, drag him clear, and let the technicians work in a clean chain of custody. She could also watch the room shatter if he chose to resist, and the dogs hated that choice. She holstered the cuffs. You stay right there. Bruno nodded once. I gave my word to someone 5 years old. How did a man like you learn to talk to dogs like that? She asked, not sure why she was buying the moment. He managed a thin smile. They guarded a warehouse I used to sweep. Men lied to me. Dogs never did. 60, the tech called. Outside, a rotor's thrum filled the sky, the highway patrol chopper dropping a cone of light over a knot of vehicles boxing the van into the drainage rut Bruno had predicted. Officers moved like a zipper closing. A suspect door popped. He bolted. A shepherd from the outside K9 unit launched in a clean arc and pinned the runner with precision that always felt like mercy. Inside, Ajax finally eased off the glass and turned back to Veronica. He stepped closer, pressed his head into the space between Bruno and the girl, as if completing the shelter. Bruno showed Veronica his hand, palm up, steady as marble. We'll count one more time. Ready? She nodded. Ready. 1, 2, hold. 1, 2. Rinaldi watched it happen, the mobster shrinking the world down to a rhythm a child could survive. She didn't like him. She would never like him. But in this place between disaster and aftermath, she needed him, and he knew it without a flicker of triumph. 30, the tech said. I'm cutting the trace. Stand by to isolate. Perimeter confirms van stopped, the dispatcher added. 2 suspects detained. Secondary devices not observed. Copy, Rinaldi said. Keep the gate sealed. Bruno leaned in just enough that only Rinaldi could hear him. Your dirty piece is inside the building, not in the van. You have a security chief who moves like a man with friends in Valletta. Her jaw flexed. You have proof? Locker number's in your pocket, he said. She patted the note he'd slid her earlier and hated that it warmed under her hand like a coal. 20, the tech called. If the remote team squeezes now, we eat shrapnel. Rinaldi's radio spat a quick, clipped warning from outside. Unknown handheld in suspect's pocket, followed by the blessed words, device secured. 15. Ajax shifted his weight off his forelegs and lay down, chin on paws, eyes still scanning. The other dogs mirrored him in slow waves, a living barometer predicting a pressure drop. 10. Rinaldi's voice went quiet. Everyone breathe. Bruno counted with the girl, lips barely moving. 1, 2, 9. The tech slid the cutters under a thread of green solder like a surgeon poised above a nerve. 8. Through the glass, Sun struck chrome, the terminal filled with a hard, clean light. 7. Veronica pressed her forehead to Ajax's, as if trading courage. 6. Isolate, the tech whispered to himself. 5. Rinaldi's fingers gripped the rail until the bones showed. 4. Bruno's eyes never left the blade. 3. A soft, steady beep climbed toward its peak. 2. On my mark, the tech breathed. Cut, dash, dash. The timer on his wrist rolled to 1 second. The world held its breath while the bomb tech worked. Inside the cordon, the maintenance bag sat in a squat steel cradle, panels clamped like a jaw. The lead tech, visor fogged, voice calm in the tinny mic, threaded a fiber scope through the zipper teeth. The monitor bloomed with tight coils and a slim circuit board lacquered in black resin. No timer, no pressure plate. A radio trigger, waiting for a call it would never get. Positive residue, the tech said. RDX traces, modest charge directional, designed to shred glass and lungs. Rinaldi's fingers tightened on the tape line. Her eyes flicked to Bruno, and back again as the tech slid a disruptor into place, a small cannon with a syringe of water and grit. On your cue, the second tech said. Bruno stood just behind her, quiet, Veronica's pink sleeve still creased into the shape of his palm. He didn't look at the device. He looked at the windows, at the reflection of blue lights sliding across the glass. They wanted a headline, he murmured. Draw me to the girl. Fire this from across the room. Make the dogs look like the scare. Make me look like the cause. Rinaldi didn't answer. The disruptor popped, a dry, percussive thud. The screen stuttered, then went flat. The tech exhaled. Initiator severed. Secondary is dead. Sound rushed back, the far-off roar of engines, the murmur of displaced passengers, someone sobbing into a phone. Rinaldi sagged a millimeter, then straightened as if she hadn't. Confirm cold. Cold, the tech said, already cutting foam to cocoon the remains. Bruno rolled his shoulders once, as if a weight had shifted ribs. Good dogs, he said without raising his voice. Ajax, by the window, flicked an ear and settled, the first calm in him all morning. Outside, tires screamed. The black van that had idled like a held breath decided to run. Sirens converged from 3 directions. The helicopter's rotor wash trembled on the glass. Rinaldi's radio sparked with layered voices. Unit 3 in pursuit, Unit 4 deploying strips, driver evasive with a pouch of caltrops flung from the window, one cruiser limping but alive. Stay put, Rinaldi told Bruno. I'm not going to the gate, he said. I'm staying with the kid. He meant it like a wall. Veronica peered around his leg, small face blotched from the tears she'd run out of. Is the unicorn sick? She asked. It's going to the doctor, Bruno said. The doctor already made it safe. Rinaldi watched him, catalogued the gentle, the calculated, both true. She turned as a sergeant jogged up with a rugged tablet, breath fogging. Ma'am, intel dump from the van when they panicked. Driver tossed a phone. We've got snapshots before encryption kicked. He held up a freeze frame. A laptop desktop littered with folders named for airports and months. One window open on a spreadsheet. Dates, plate numbers, wire transfers. Anchoring the corner, a PDF of a property registry. The holding company name was Bland, the way rot likes Bland. But the stamp in the header, Malta Business Registry, hooked Bruno's gaze like a fish. Back, he said softly, tapping the screen with a knuckle. Zoom. The sergeant hesitated. Rinaldi gave a nod. The photo sharpened. A waterfront condo shell in Valletta. Board of directors, 2 straw names, and, buried in a power of attorney line, K. Keller. Rinaldi felt heat run up her neck. That a coincidence, Lombardi? You're the cop, he said. But I've seen that shell used to wash bribes out of procurement. Chief Keller likes fancy boats. Fancy boats need slips. Malta has slips. You got proof of that? The sergeant asked, bristling at the mobster's certainty. Maybe in his second phone, Bruno said. Maybe in a locker he thinks no one knows. There's a number I could write if someone had a pen. Rinaldi gave him a stare that said, "Don't get cute." He didn't. He brought out a pen like a surgeon produces a scalpel and leaned on the back of a folding chair. His handwriting was square, old school. He wrote a locker bank, a row, a box, then paused and wrote a 4-digit code. He tore the page free and slid it to Rinaldi with 2 fingers, palm open. "Source?" she asked. "An overdue favor," he said. "One I'm not calling in if your people break my men's bones for being near an airport." "You texted them to stand down." "I did," he said. And there it was, the cost of restraint laid bare. The line of men milling at the far rail, hands empty, pride bleeding as they watched their boss take orders from the badge that wanted him in chains. "I told them no heroics. We go home vertical or we don't go," the radio blared. "Contact!" Then the metallic pop of spike strips taking breath from tires. The van fishtailed, ground sparks, slewed sideways into the chain link and hung there, engine coughing. K9 teams boiled around it like ink. A shepherd hit the passenger hard enough to steal fight. The driver went down under 3 muzzles and measured pressure. "Suspects in custody," a voice reported. "Recovering devices." Rinaldi nodded once at the air. She looked back to Bruno. "You're not leaving." "If I were leaving," he said, "you'd be looking at my back." "Consider that," she said. "A compliment." Medics swept in to check Veronica's pupils, wrap a silver blanket around her shoulders, offer a pink stethoscope to make the world less sharp. Bruno crouched so his eyes were level with hers. "You hear that sound?" he asked, nodding to the distant sirens softening into static. "It's loud," she whispered. "Then listen under it," he said. "Find the slow thing. Count it for me. 1, 2, she matched him. Shaky at first, then steadier. Ajax lay sphinx still beside them, head up, ears working like little radar dishes. The dog's breath was steady enough to borrow. The bomb team sealed the disarmed device and hoisted the containment bucket onto a dolly. The crowd at the far rope line started to clap. Nervous, grateful, not sure where to put their eyes. News cameras had arrived and were angling for the long shot. Rinaldi's jaw set. "Keep lenses off the kid," she snapped. "Blur faces or I'll blur your credentials." The sergeant returned with an evidence satchel and a grim half-grin. "Van had drives," he said. "Several. Passport book, too. 5 identities between the 2 of them. Some stamps match last month's no-go flights." Rinaldi took the satchel. She didn't open it here. She looked at the note in her other hand, the locker numbers burning like they carried heat. She slid the square of paper into her vest, close enough to feel as she breathed. Emergency was giving way to investigation. The rhythm of her day shifted from sprint to hunt. A ripple passed through the cordon, small at first, then sharper as it approached. A woman's voice breached the shell of controlled motion, raw and bright with panic. "Veronica!" Heads turned. The word hit the room like a thrown stone. Rinaldi's hand went up by instinct. "Hold the perimeter," she barked. "Nobody breaks the line." But the voice was already closer, weaving through gaps nobody had meant to leave, a mother's desperation bending rules that moments ago felt like iron. Bruno's head snapped toward the sound. Veronica, mid-breath, lifted her face. "Mom?" And then the scream cut the air clean. "That's my daughter!" The woman broke through the last row of arms, hair wild, eyes blown, fingers clawing at the tape. Officers moved to block and guide at the same time. Training versus empathy wrestling in their bodies. The cordon trembled, the aftershock of a morning that wouldn't stop moving. Rinaldi stepped forward to intercept, to funnel, to keep order from tipping back into chaos. As behind her, the containment bucket rolled away, the van clanked shut with suspects inside, and the note in her vest seemed to hum with names that would matter before the sun went down. The scream cut through the cordon like a flare. Officers turned, palms up, but the dogs moved first. 14 bodies shifted as one, the circle around Veronica loosening, not breaking, creating a narrow aisle that formed and held as if the floor itself had learned manners. "Veronica!" The woman stumbled inside the ring, breath jerking, hair half loosed from a clip. Veronica lurched forward. The shepherd on her left, Ajax, pivoted, shoulder brushing the child's hip to steady her, as if he'd practiced this reunion 100 times in dreams. Mother and daughter collided at the center of fur and light, a sound rising that wasn't a scream anymore, but the fragile music relief makes when it finally finds a throat. The unit softened, tails lowered, ears eased, noses pressed and released, the pack's geometry reshaping around 2 human heartbeats that had found each other again. A handler slipped a blanket over the woman's shoulders. Another tucked one around the girl. A medic's hand trembled only once, then steadied against Veronica's wrist. Bruno had already taken 2 steps backward, then a third. He angled his body just enough to draw sightlines, attention, cameras away from the reunion. It worked. Lenses hunted motion. He gave them stillness. He slid his hands into open air, nothing in them but the absence of threat. For a man who'd built a life out of occupying space, invisibility was the only gift he could afford. Lieutenant Sophia Rinaldi watched him with the kind of focus you save for cliffs and detonators. The paper he'd palmed her earlier felt heavier than it should in her pocket. She waited until the medics checked pupils and pulses, until the paramedic with the quiet voice coaxed Veronica's fingers from the unicorn long enough to stow it in an evidence bag, until the room's panic exhaled into something like air again. Then she unfolded the note. Locker 314, North Concourse. Code 1987 hash. V.S. Keller's Malta Shell, Valletta Harbor Holdings, Units 6, Transfer Cadence, Thursday, Saturday, 2:15, cameras at 2:12 loop 90 seconds. B. Her jaw tightened. It wasn't just detail. It was rhythm. Only someone who'd lived inside schemes would know where the seams lived. She lifted her radio. "Rinaldi, I need a 2-off, plainclothes, North Concourse lockers, 314. No sirens, no chatter. Body cam on, audio silent. Call me when you're parked." A beat, then. "Copy, Lieutenant." Rinaldi crouched by Veronica's mother. "I'm Sophia. We're here. You're safe." The woman nodded, muscles shaking the way bridges shake after trucks pass. Veronica peered up through wet lashes, reading the faces of the dogs like words she already knew. Ajax lowered his head so she could kiss the place between his eyes. He would have wagged his whole spine if he'd been allowed. "Keep the ring," Rinaldi told the handlers quietly. "Let them own this space." She straightened. Bruno Lombardi stood 10 yards away, looking at nothing and seeing everything. The part of her training that cataloged threats annotated him in red, underlined, circled. The part that loved clean outcomes wrote something else beside his name, stood still when it counted. Her radio clicked. "Rinaldi, we're at 314. "Camera sweep first," she said. "Then open." Silence like a held note. Then, softly, "We've got it." Envelope, ledger pieces, 2 passport books, photo set. You'll want eyes. "Bring it to the post, chain of custody clean." She cut the channel and looked once more at the note, at the initials V-S, and the name Keller riding the page like a loaded weight. Chief Robert Keller, airport security, untouchable until 5 minutes ago, when a man she should be cuffing had given her the string. Medics finished their first pass. Emily Torres, because that was her name now, not just the woman, ran a palm over Veronica's hair, counting breaths by the rise and fall under a blanket that smelled like clean cloth and dog. "Mom," Veronica whispered, voice smaller than the room. They worked. They did, Emily said, kissing her brow. They did. Rinaldi knelt to the girl's level. I'm going to be nearby, okay? These dogs will keep you safe. She glanced at Bruno, then away, as if refusing to name a complicated truth where a child could hear it. At the command post, the envelope's belly opened. Cash chips in plastic sleeves, a ledger with neat columns and uglier implications. Photographs. Keller in a restaurant booth with Victor Santoro, the rival who wore empathy-like cologne and washed it off after meetings. Timestamps. A shot of a marina in Valletta, blue water, white hulls, the name Harbor Holdings on a frosted glass door. A transfer sheet with 37 entries at 2:15. A USB, a cheap one, the kind you throw away after it tells the truth. Lieutenant. I see it, Rinaldi said. She didn't breathe for 4 heartbeats. Then she let out a breath that felt like it had been waiting in her ribs for years. Chain everything. External warrant for Keller? Sealed. Keep Santoro off the air until we plant our feet. She turned back towards the concourse. A child yawned against a collar of fur. Handlers smiled with their eyes. The dogs owned the room, the way firefighters own rooms after flames go black. Not with triumph, but with respect earned by paying attention. Cameras finally found holes in the perimeter. A news crew skated under a stanchion. A freelancer climbed a chair. Phone flashes began to strobe. Rinaldi walked a slow arc between microphones and the family, her body the buffer, her badge the permission to say no. Back, she told a producer without looking at him. You film from beyond the blue. He opened his mouth. She didn't give him a place to put words. The narrative had already flipped without her help. A boom mic dipped toward a handler. Did the dogs attack the girl? They protected her. Did they find a bomb on her? No, the handler said, and if his voice shook, it was with pride. They found her. By the escalators, a child in a soccer jersey clapped, and the sound spread. Strangers applauded the sight of tails and discipline and a child breathing. For once, the city agreed on what heroism looked like. Bruno edged farther into the column of shadow thrown by a support beam. He had made 3 decisions in the last hour that would take years off a life like his. He'd told men who measured respect by velocity to do nothing. He'd walked toward a danger designed for him. He'd given a cop with wary eyes a map with his fingerprints on it. Restraint is not cheap in his world. Every second he didn't move would cost him in places he couldn't afford to be in debt. He stood anyway. Rinaldi wanted to hate him as an idea. As a fact, he had sheltered a child with nothing but hands and a promise. The ledger in her pocket burned like a coal. She stepped his way. You knew Keller, she said quietly. I knew a pattern, he answered. And Santoro? He looked past her at Veronica, who had fallen asleep against her mother's shoulder, lashes making parenthesis on her cheeks. I know men who like headlines. Why the locker? Because warrants make longer stories than ambulances, he said, and a ghost of a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth before dying, ashamed to be seen. Her radio hummed. Lieutenant, USB has a dock tree. Transfers from Harbor Holdings to Keller's brother-in-law. Shell crush looks doable. Copy, she said, eyes still on Bruno. On a different day, she would be reciting rights now. On this one, she pocketed the handcuffs she hadn't drawn and let the dogs teach the room how to behave. Tell the girl it was them, he said. Not me. I will, she said, and meant it. A handler touched her sleeve. Ma'am, you'll want to see this. He held up a child's crayon drawing on a triage clipboard someone had turned into a makeshift desk. 14 brown and black circles around a small figure with yellow hair and a pink square jacket. In the corner, a tall stick man in a dark block stood with empty hands. Rinaldi smiled, despite herself. We'll frame it. The applause swelled as more cameras pushed against the tape. Questions started stacking like bad luggage. Was there a bomb? How did the unit know? Who's that man? Is he? Rinaldi lifted a palm, and the questions fell into themselves like birds that had flown into glass. The dogs, she said evenly, for the microphones she could not avoid. Today belongs to the dogs. A roar outside, a siren's last tired gasp, the metallic cough of a news chopper pivoting to frame the scene. Rinaldi looked back to the beam where the shadow had been. He wasn't there. She lifted onto her toes to see over the camera rigs and the curious. Through the glass, she caught the reflection of a black suit turning a corner, as ordinary as a businessman late for a flight, as final as a door closing. Ajax thumped his tail once, as if to mark the moment. Rinaldi tucked the note deeper into her pocket and faced the stampede. By the time the first boom mic cleared the line, Bruno Lombardi was gone. The precinct didn't sleep. Screens threw blue over faces, maps bled red circles across the city, and every third desk phone rang with a reporter asking the same question in nicer fonts. Who was the man in the suit? Talk dogs, talk EOD, talk procedures, Lieutenant Sophia Rinaldi said, voice flat as a gavel. Not the suit, not his name, not his shadow. She cut the call, turned to the comms sergeant. Push K9 footage only. Handler quotes, not hero worship. We credit instinct and training. That's the story. But the public gets to feel safe without memorizing a mobster, she said. We don't build a cult because he stood still once. Across the bullpen, a PR aide floated the phrase, miracle mobster. Rinaldi pinned him with a look that could sand paint. Lose the headline. These dogs saved a child. Full stop. She moved through the war room like gravity, sidestepping cables, answering 2 radios at once. Keller's name kept surfacing in hushed tones around the evidence board. Valletta Shell. Santoro's lawyers had begun to circle, angry vultures in expensive shoes. Rinaldi ignored all of it until a junior analyst jogged over, breathless. Lieutenant, media wants a face for the morning shows. You have 14, she said. Pick the ones with Paws. 4 miles away, a safe house kept half its lights off on purpose. Bruno Lombardi sat on a leather chair that had outlasted 2 landlords and more enemies than he could count. He wore shirt sleeves, and the look men get when the fight is over but the echo won't quit. News flickered across a muted screen. A slowed clip of Veronica, tiny arms around Ajax's neck, the shepherd blinking like he understood gratitude. A graphic beneath read the airport miracle in heroic fonts that would be meme by dawn. Bruno let the playback run again. And again. He didn't smile. He didn't drink. He didn't congratulate himself with the hollow language of men who mistake survival for virtue. He watched a child breathe into a dog's fur and felt something old and disused lift its head. His phone lay face down on the table. The other phone, the one no one admitted existed, was in his palm, dark. He considered powering it down for good. Powering down means you live smaller. Living smaller means you live longer. But living longer to do what? The question hovered like smoke. From the kitchen, a shadow cleared his throat. We're cousins to a miracle now, the man said, trying for lightness. Bruno didn't answer. On screen, the camera panned to a line of shepherds sitting quiet, tongues lolling, eyes like lamps in a storm. They did the work, he said at last. You did some. I stood where the danger wanted me. Dogs did the math. He reached up and muted the mute. For a second, the room filled with real sound, the roar of applause, the high, thin cry of an exhausted child laughing. He had heard both before, in very different rooms. He let it wash over him, then killed the sound again. The quiet came down like snow. At 2:17, a prosecutor named Delaney unlocked her office alone and found a brown envelope sitting neat on her chair, as if it had grown there. The label said, Airport, do not photocopy. Inside, maps with red thread drawn in digital ink, bank transfers stepping through Maltese shells into a domestic security consultancy, a flight log annotated by hand, a cropped still from a maintenance corridor camera showing a man with a rolling tool case, and a service badge that didn't hold up to squinting. Attached sheet, typed and cold. Contractor, Luis Morera, alias Luis Mori, badge cloned from retired staff, entry pattern 0705 to 0725, exits through vendor dock. Dead drop habit, stainless locker bank, Easton Storage, Unit D17, every Wednesday between 2000 hours and 2020 hours. Contact, Elias, burner rotates, IMEI list included. Handler, Keller. Paymaster, Santoro cutout via Valletta shell, aurum mare lintrode. Delaney's pen hovered, then moved. Chain of custody, she whispered to an empty room, initialing her own conscience. Outside her window, the city glowed like circuitry. Inside her chest, a different light switched on. This was real, actionable, threaded tight enough to pull. Her inbox pinged. No sender, no subject. 5 PDFs. The first page opened on its own. A simple routing slip with a line at the bottom in plain serif type. For the dogs. She closed her eyes. Okay, she said softly, to the envelope, to the night, to the risk. We move. Rinaldi read the same packet under fluorescence that made everyone look guilty. She didn't ask who. She didn't need the answer to do her job. Secure Easton Storage, Unit D, she told her captain. No sirens, no theater. Keller gets tagged with a warrant so clean it squeaks. Santoro's phones get hugged, not pinged. We keep this surgical. The captain scratched his jaw. And the suit? He stays a rumor, Rinaldi said. If he wanted applause, he would have waited for cameras. Her comms sergeant lifted a hand. Lieutenant, what if he shows? The question hung between the maps and the coffee cups and the evidence bag marked unicorn. Rinaldi thought of how Bruno had spoken to Ajax, not like a magician, like a man who had learned to say please. If he shows, she said carefully, he stays outside the tape. If he crosses it, we cuff him. But make damn sure the tape doesn't move. She signed 2 affidavits, 3 requisitions, a request for an undercover storage pass with the kind of urgency that never touched her voice. Then she put both hands on the table and leaned until the paper stopped feeling like paper. Listen, she told the room. Duty isn't noisy. Neither is debt. Tonight we keep them both quiet and we go home without funerals. Heads nodded, chairs scraped. The machine of lawful force began to turn, slow and exact. In the safe house, the second phone finally lit. A number no one tried to trace blinked once, patient. Bruno turned it over in his palm, thumb hovering, then opened the message. Easton Storage D17. 2000 hours. Bring nothing noisy. He pictured the locker bank, the scuffed chrome, the smell of dust and oil, the way bad secrets prefer clean surfaces. He pictured Rinaldi in a borrowed windbreaker that didn't fool anyone, jaw clenched, eyes everywhere. He pictured his crew waiting for orders they wouldn't like. He typed, "Stand down." 3 dots pulsed and died. No argument came. Restraint has a cost, but in his world, disobedience is pricier. Orders? The shadow in the doorway asked. Surround the perimeter, Bruno said. You don't breathe on it. If the cops lose the thread, you tie it. If Santoro sends muscle, they see ours first. Palms open, palms empty. That'll read like weakness. Good, Bruno said. Let them misread. He stood, buttoned the shirt he hadn't unbuttoned, slipped on the jacket with the weight that meant he was leaving safety behind. He paused at the news again. The anchor's lips formed words that would become hashtags by morning. He didn't need the volume to remember the feel of a small hand on fur. You should sleep, boss, the shadow said. I'll sleep when I know she can, Bruno answered, surprised by his own honesty. By 1942, Easton Storage was a sketch of shadows and halogen. By 1958, it had a pulse. An unmarked van 2 blocks off. A delivery truck that wasn't a delivery truck. A pair of men who stood like they owned their feet and nothing else. Rinaldi breathed through her scarf and watched condensation furl from her mouth. "Positions," she murmured. Her earpiece ticked. "Unit D-Row Green. Locker bank in sight. No movement." She thought of Veronica's mother. She thought of Keller's signature on a funding request from 3 months ago that now read like confession. She thought, unwillingly, of a man in a black suit giving her a note without flinching. Duty versus debt. She let the words touch and not catch. "No cowboy moves," she said. "We catch the contractor clean, we bag the downloads, we keep it quiet." On a rooftop across the alley, 2 of Bruno's men stood far enough back to be shadows of shadows. The taller one, old boxer's nose, crooked, kept his hands visible. "This is going to itch," he muttered. "That's how you know you're healing," the other said, and meant it. At 20:06, a figure broke from the sidewalk and slipped through the roll-up door. Cap low, case pulled, stride learned at airports. He didn't look up. He looked like a man who trusted a routine to keep him breathing. "Morera," Rinaldi whispered, recognition snapping through the team like a current. "Let him open. Wait for the hand to the locker, then take him." Footsteps. The click of coin on chrome. The hiss of a key rubbing burrs. Bruno's phone buzzed once in his pocket, silent but heavy. A new text pushed beneath the first, from a number he knew he didn't know. "You should have died at B12. Next time, we use a church." Night washed the city in sodium orange and wet asphalt. The airport was a memory now, a loop of applause and sirens that kept replaying in the backs of skulls. But the work had slipped into the quieter lanes where the story either ends clean or keeps bleeding. Sophia Rinaldi stood beneath a peeling streetlight across from the canal. The dead drop was a municipal locker bolted into the concrete underpass, tagged with old graffiti and the new stink of river rot. She'd chosen the posts herself, plainclothes on both ends of the footpath, a decoy couple arguing in a hatchback, 2 uniforms hidden by a service van with a broken taillight, a K9 team 30 meters back so they wouldn't spook the meat. Radios clicked in the smallest breaths. "Eyes up," she murmured into her sleeve mic. "He's cautious. He'll touch the lock twice and look at the water." On the pedestrian bridge, a narrow man in a contractor's jacket appeared, shoulders tucked to his ears like guilt had weight. He moved with the careful impatience of someone who'd rehearsed leaving. He passed the locker, doubled back, and then stood with his back to the rail while his right hand slid the key into the slot. Sophia gave the smallest nod. "Now." The decoy couple ended their argument mid-syllable and shut their doors. The service van's side panel rolled open without a sound. 2 plainclothes officers lifted off the shadows and wrapped the man fast and silent, one on the wrists, another on the head to keep him from seeing the sky. Canine. Ajax padded forward, not for the bite, but for the breath at the suspect's neck, the dog's way of saying, "Don't try the river." "No shots," Sophia said, because that mattered. "We keep it clean." From a dark sedan half a block away, 2 figures didn't move. Bruno's men, hands open on their knees, watching the perimeter like they were minding a borrowed church. They had been ordered to stand down, and for once, the order had outweighed pride. A decision like that costs a city nothing, and a crew everything. They ferried the contractor into the van and taped the locker key to an evidence card. Sophia climbed in last, knees knocking steel. "Name," she said. The man's teeth chattered once before his mouth remembered words. "Hugo Merrick." "We already have Hugo," said the detective beside her. "Then I'm the one who fixed the toy," Merrick said, "and I can prove who told me to." Sophia held his stare. He blinked. Fear turned into information. They didn't drive to the precinct. They parked under the expressway where the rain came through in a thin, steady needle and let the white noise make a room. The body cam ran. The tapes would live forever. Sophia checked the time, the angle, the dog at her boot. Talk. Marek talked about a subcontractor slot that didn't exist until cash appeared, about a security clearance rubber-stamped by a desk that answered to Chief Robert Keller, about a plush unicorn handed back to a child with a transmitter tucked in its gut, and the sentence he'd been given to use if anyone asked. Just a loose stitch. Why the girl? Sophia asked. She was the lure, Marek said. They told me to pick any kid who looked alone. I didn't want... He swallowed. I didn't want anyone hurt. You put a signal in her toy. I was told it wasn't explosive. The bag was the explosive. They said the signal had to wake the bag when... He stopped, eyes dropping to the channel of rain between them. When Bruno Lombardi came within the window. Sophia didn't look away. Who told you to say his name out loud? He flinched like she'd struck him. Victor Santoro, he whispered. And Keller. Keller cleared the crew at the gate. Keller deleted parts of the camera run. Sophia nodded once. She didn't look toward the sedan, where two silhouettes still watched, motionless. She didn't have to. The shape of restraint was felt, not seen. Phones, she said. Marek's burner came in 2 pieces. He's got a second, Ajax's handler said. Smell of adhesive, right ankle. They found it taped under a sock, hot with recent messages. Marek sagged as if confession had bones, and he'd been carrying them for miles. Put him on the wire, Sophia said. 1 call, Santoro. They lifted the van's antenna. Marek dialed. The ring was a long tunnel. When the answer came, it was a breath, and then a voice that had spent a life being obeyed. Report. It's done, Marek said. The locker tonight, and Keller wants to know, dawn or noon? Dawn, the voice said. Dawn. Always dawn. The line clicked dead. A timestamp rolled across the bodycam feed like a seal. Sophia exhaled through her teeth. We have him, she said, like a prayer she didn't trust. Across town, Chief Keller stepped out of a private car into the reserved basement he'd lied about not having. He walked into his office and opened a desk drawer, and the first thing he did was remove a phone with no carrier stamp and drop it into a glass of water. The second phone he smashed with a stapler until it was puzzle pieces. Then he lifted his head because 2 U.S. Marshals were already in the room. Sleeves rolled, faces neutral. Chief Keller, the taller one said. Hands where we can see them. Keller's eyes cut toward the wall safe. The marshal shook his head. Don't, he said, and made it sound like 2 syllables of mercy. They laid papers on the desk. Warrant for the safe. Warrant for the house. Warrant for the account in Valletta with a signature that had pretended to be a shell. The wall safe opened and a file slid out. It smelled like glue and foreign plastic. In the van, Sophia's phone buzzed, an encrypted ping from the prosecutor working her side of the board. A PDF thumbnail bloomed, transfers, property pins, a ladder of names that built a scaffold. The shell stack had always looked stable from the sidewalk. Up close, it was termite dust. Read it, the detective said. Sophia did. Santoro's name glowed like a heat map. Behind him, intermediaries whose passports were purchased with withdrawals made the day before a raid that never happened because someone at a desk had nudged a calendar. At the bottom, the language that mattered most. Predicate acts, conspiracy, racketeering, forfeiture, paper handcuffs, the strong kind. She turned to Marek. The airport was a pilot, she said. He nodded, shame dragging his chin down. They called it pressure, he murmured. Stage an event, then seize a turf under emergency orders. You make the city beg you to take it. Sophia's jaw worked. The taste in her mouth was metal and old anger. Not this time. In the sedan, a phone vibrated on a knee. Bruno watched the bridge lights stutter on the canal and didn't pick up until the second buzz. He read the text without moving the rest of his body. "You should have died at B12. Next time we use a church." He could have answered with an address and a time and turned the night red. Instead, he typed a single word to a different thread. "Confirmed." The reply was immediate. "Copy. We hold." He closed his eyes and saw a girl's hands fisted in fur, a dog's steadiness like a door that wouldn't break. He opened them again because it was time to move in the only direction that wouldn't make the morning worse. "Stay with the perimeter," he told his men. "If they get loud, we leave. If they get quiet, we leave faster." Under the expressway, the van rolled. Sophia called the marshal's detail riding Keller's shadow. "Do not bring him through the front," she said. "Side entrance, no leaks." "To the DA?" the marshal asked. "To me," she said. "For 1 hour. Then the DA." She hung up and looked at Merrick. "You'll wear a wire for the arraignment hallway. If Santoro breathes near you, we catch the breath." Merrick closed his eyes. "I don't want to die in a hallway." "You won't," she said, "because we're going to make this boring." He laughed once, a broken thing. "That's the worst punishment." "It's justice," she said, and surprised herself with how much she meant it. By midnight, the shell companies began to cough up their secrets. Warrants ate through file rooms, servers cloned under chain of custody. An accountant in a rented townhouse dialed her lawyer, and then Sophia, in that order, and surrendered a ledger wrapped in butcher paper. In the corner of every room, there was something that remembered dawn. The clock, the window, the body knowing when light returns. At 3 a.m., Sophia walked out into the wind off the canal and let the cold shove the night back into shape. Her phone buzzed again. The prosecutor's message was just text, no punctuation. Green light for coordinated arrests at first light stack warrants are clean Rinaldi, you call it. She looked down the block where the sedan still idled, lights off, 2 silhouettes pretending to be statues. She didn't wave. She didn't need to. "Copy," she typed back. Dawn. Dawn broke without drama. No sirens clawing the sky, no helicopters bullying the rooftops, just a pale wash of light sliding down glass towers and across sleeping streets. Lieutenant Sophia Rinaldi stood at the incident board while the clock struck 5 o'clock. On her word, units moved like breath. Quiet, synchronized, inevitable. Warrants opened doors. Body cams blinked green. The city did not flinch. "Go," she said into her mic. In South Channel, a steel door whispered off its hinges, and plainclothes officers stepped through a warehouse of boxed appliances that never met a storefront. Hands rose, no shouting. Zip ties, evidence bags, a calm inventory of sins. On the east side, marshals lifted a gate beneath an overpass and found the ledger man still in his socks, blinking at dawn as if the sun itself were suspicious. Uptown, a shell company condo surrendered to a key fished from a locker number scrawled on a note. Drawers coughed up passports stacked like playing cards. "Maintain silence protocols," Rinaldi reminded. "No press chatter. No hero speeches. Bring them in without splash." Her screen populated with "clear" stamps. 3 safe houses, 2 servers, 1 storage unit. She marked off Victor Santoro's apartment last, the red dot that had sat on the map like a throbbing headache. He came out pinched and sleep-sour, robe belt knotted, a man whose angles were all suddenly the wrong direction. No chase. No chase meant no funerals. By 7:10, the war room smelled like coffee and printer heat. Keller cracked first. Not confession. He wasn't built for that, but a collapse in posture that told the story without the nouns. He'd smashed a phone the night before. Marshals had pulled the SIM from the gutter grate because some grates hold their secrets poorly. Transfers to a Valletta shell, contracts scrawled in pretty language to cleanse ugly decisions, a packet of contingency planning that looked exactly like mass panic on demand. All of it slid into labeled folders, the kind the city relies on when it chooses to keep breathing. Rinaldi wrote 2 names on the whiteboard and boxed them. Keller, Santoro. Beneath, she added a thin line. Contractor. Plea. The man who'd fixed a child's toy had flipped. Details were ugly but precise. He'd been the hand, not the head. He'd take the years and talk every minute of them. "Lieutenant," a sergeant said at her shoulder, "press already calling this a Dawn of Dogs thing." "Let them," she answered. "The dogs earned it." Keep Bruno's name off every tongue. We're not rewriting the story for a headline. He nodded. She felt the choice settle. A structural beam inside the day. By mid-morning, the city returned to its usual noise. Horns in the mid-distance, vendors arguing over crates, a bus groaning through a turn. At St. Mercy Children's, a volunteer at the front desk glanced up as a man in a dark coat placed a small gift on the counter. Not big, a stuffed shepherd with stitched ears and a soft, steady gaze. The tag hooked to its collar read, in clean block letters, "For Veronica, from the dogs." "Can I tell her who left it?" the volunteer asked. The man shook his head once. "The dogs," he said, voice low and ordinary, and turned away before the question could find him again. In Veronica Torres' room, morning made a square of light on the blanket. She still slept with one hand spread as if touching a world that needed reassuring. Her mother sat in a chair by the window, watching the city wake like a tide. When the volunteer entered with the shepherd, Veronica stirred and reached, half dream, half memory. "Ajax," she whispered, then giggled, as children do when they decide the universe is kind enough to confuse with love. Back at precinct, a thin manila envelope waited at Rinaldi's station, unmarked except for a single slash of black ink. Inside, a still frame, body cam origin. 14 dogs formed an imperfect circle, ears tipped toward threat, and in the white-hot center, a tall man in a black suit bent his shoulders to make shade for a girl in a pink jacket. Hands open, head low, eyes not on the cameras but the child. Rinaldi exhaled, the kind that admits both relief and warning. She slid the still into a drawer and shut it softly. Some images break the story when they're seen. Some keep it whole when they aren't. At noon, the chief stood behind microphones and used the right words. He thanked EOD, patrol, marshals, analysts. He mentioned teamwork, professionalism, vigilance. He said the city sleeps because others choose not to. And when the questions turned hot, rival syndicates, rumors of an unknown civilian actor, the van, the bag, he lifted his palm and did the good thing for once. "Today belongs to the K9 unit," he said. 14 partners recognized what we missed and kept a child safe. Credit goes to them. News chyrons spun. K9 wall prevents airport massacre. Keller's resignation letter leaked within the hour and looked like a man trying to write about weather while standing in a flood. Santoro's lawyer scheduled a press conference, then canceled it. The contractor's plea hit the court docket with timestamps that would read like mercy to some and like math to others. Rinaldi walked the length of the kennel in the afternoon light, hands behind her back, shoulders still tight from a night without bed. Ajax leaned against her leg and huffed. A dog's version of, "Don't get dramatic." She scratched his ruff. "You kept your head," she told him. "Wish the rest of us had your nose." Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You kept the city from making me into a story I couldn't control. That won't be forgotten." A second buzz followed it like a heartbeat. The girl's name matters. Make sure they say it. Veronica. Rinaldi typed back nothing. She deleted both messages and felt better and worse. Duty and debt shook hands inside her chest and called a truce. At dusk, the prosecutor signed off on the last of the warrants. "Clean work," he said, not looking up from the stack that would pin careers to corkboards. "You'll get a commendation out of this." "Give it to the handlers," she said. "The dogs don't hang plaques, but the people who feed them do." He smiled at that, quick, human, and returned to his mountain. The hospital settled into its evening hush, monitors speaking in careful beeps. Veronica drew with a set of crayons the nurse had scavenged from the playroom. 14 dogs in a wide ring, and taller than all of them, a man in a black suit whose hands were open like doors. She colored the jacket the darkest shade she could find, then pressed the paper flat the way children do when they want their truth to stay. On the back, she asked her mother to help with the letters. Together they wrote in a slow, careful line. "Thank you for standing still." The paper would travel, first to a refrigerator door with magnets shaped like fruit, then copied by a grateful precinct to hang outside a kennel, then scanned and sent as a JPG by a nurse who thought the internet needed gentleness. The original would end up, through route and favor and luck, in a plain envelope carried by a driver who never looked in the mirror. Night came gentle. Streetlights found the rain-polished shine in the pavement. Somewhere in the city, in a doorway that kept his life in and danger out, a man unfolded the note with hands that had learned younger to close into fists. He read the crooked letters and let his breath settle like dust after a fall. On a nearby table, a phone lay face down. Several messages waited. None were urgent in the ways he respected now. He looked toward the dark beyond the threshold. The world he would not enter tonight, the fight he would not choose. And then down at the words that asked nothing of him except the hardest thing: to be still when stillness is the bravest act. "Work," he whispered to memory, and for once, memory wagged its tail. If this story has your attention, hit that subscribe button and let us know where in the world you're watching from. Every story we tell connects the past to the present, and we'd love to have you with us for the next one.